All right, you're looking here at a Canon viewfinder for the T3i. The interface is very similar throughout the Canon line, from the 5D Mark II all the way down to the Digital Rebel. You can apply the lessons learned in this tutorial over to the Nikon side of things too. The same logic applies, although the interface will be different. We're in manual mode, indicated by the M, which means we control the shutter speed and the aperture. Now, the shutter speed is going to bring more light into the camera, so the longer the shutter speed, the brighter the picture will be. But the longer the shutter speed, it also allows, if you're shooting people or moving objects, you can get blurred images. The longer the shutter is open, if things move, it's going to blur. If you're shooting stop motion, still images, anything that's locked down, it's not a concern. So this is the shutter speed. We're at 1/8 of a second, and then this is the aperture, or the f-stop, and that controls the depth of field, and that's going to allow you to blur out the background or keep the background in focus. And again, full manual allows you to control both of those things. Now, it does give you an indicator here about what a normal exposure is, and that's the center point of that little visual gauge. The center point means it's within the range of normalcy, if you want to call it. Of course, you can exploit normalcy to create creative effects, of course, as you desire, but that tells you that you're in range, or how far out of range you are according to their standards. There are other settings on the camera that allow you to control just the aperture or just the exposure time. And all of Canon's stuff is controlled. Let me tilt the camera down. On the top of the camera on a dial, and let me zoom in a little bit to that. And so we're on full manual right now, represented by the M corresponding to that white line. There's also AV, which is the aperture priority, and TV, which is the shutter priority, exposure time. And then the other one that I do use sometimes is, of course, just the full auto, if you're just doing some point and shoot stuff. Generally, I do like the TV because I think it makes a lot of sense. If you're not concerned with with blurring out the background, it makes a lot of sense, especially to students, because it's like the longer the exposure, the brighter it will be. The shorter the exposure, the darker it will be. That's pretty simple logic. So the bigger the number, the brighter it is. The smaller the number, the darker it will be. F-stop is I think a little more confusing for students, but it's very important to teach them about depth of field, because artistically, depth of field is a very powerful tool to create images. And then, of course, full manual just allows you to control both, so that gives you full control of the camera. So we're going to look at some full manual stuff. I have a simple figure set up here. It's King Kong. And if we take the camera back behind the camera, take the one camera behind the other camera, we're going to adjust this camera using a couple things. Since we're in full manual, we've got a knob here at the bottom. It's like a ring that slides. Let me see if we can get a picture of that, and that is right here. There it is. and this thing just moves. It's just a dial wheel, and then that adjusts the aperture, excuse me, that adjusts the exposure. And then if we press down on this button here, which is the AV plus minus, and twist the wheel at the same time, then that will adjust the f-stop. Okay? And then this gauge will keep us kind of within the targeted range according to Canon specifications. Again, if we want to break the rules, we can, but that gives us a nice gauge of where to go. All right, so I've got a 24mm lens on it. I've got the aperture set to f2.8, and my exposure, it's telling me based on this gauge here, let me just take a picture and get it back in. My gauge is telling me I should shoot between 1/10 of a second and 1/40th of a second. And this has a nice blur to the back of the picture. The foreground, the subject, King Kong, is very focused, and it's for a simple test, it's working out nicely. So that's kind of the fundamentals. I'm big on experimenting, especially with digital stuff. I'd encourage your students to set up a simple set piece or puppet or object, and set up. I've just got a simple one light on this thing, and start experimenting with manual, full manual, AV, and TV mode, and even shoot some full auto, because you'll see how ugly it is. Haha. So you've got I just have one light, just giving some light to Kong, and then the camera is just kind of right in his face because it's a wide angle, so I got it pretty close. And that's the whole thing with setting up the camera.